In today's video, we have some NHL trade talk around teams like Montreal, Philadelphia, and Vancouver. Plus, we have some big signings today, including the Flyers extending Travis Sanheim, some more news from the NHL waiver wire, and some NHL injuries from last night's action. All that and more coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have a variety of NHL news and rumors to take a look at here today. First up, a quick recap of what happened last night. We saw 6 games on the NHL schedule. There's a bunch more going on tonight. We saw the home opener for the Montreal Canadiens battling the Toronto Maple Leafs. You could call it a bit of an upset, but the Habs do win 4-3. It's only one game. I'm sure there's lots of overreactions on both sides of the fan bases here, but certainly not what we expected. Matt Murray's weak glove side, you could say, was exposed by the Habs, and certainly the Leafs had some lackluster play, a few giveaways, a little sloppiness. Wasn't their best game, but like I said, it's one game. I'm sure there's people on both sides freaking out for the good or the bad, and lots of time left, so let's not overreact to that stuff. The Canucks get out to a hot start against the Oilers, up 3-0 early, but the Oilers come back, took over the game and won 5-3. I know there's some Canucks fans are probably concerned over that, but certainly the Oilers are a dominant team. Jack Campbell looked shaky early on, let in some goals he should have had, but he did settle down, which is a good news, and the Oilers won the game. The Bruins beat the Capitals 5-2. They looked pretty good in the process as well, so we'll see how good the Bruins are going to be this year with all the injuries they are dealing with. Of course, they did lose Jake DeBrusk to injury partway through the game, and he did not return. Haven't seen any further updates yet on his condition, so I don't know if he's going to be out for an extended time or what's going on with DeBrusk, but it looked to be like an arm or shoulder or something like that that he was dealing with. We also saw the Hurricanes beat the Jackets 4-1. Patrick Laine did have a good start to the game, scored a nice goal. Then he got hurt, and he's going to be out for about 3 to 4 weeks with an elbow sprain. It certainly didn't look... it's one of those injuries that didn't look bad, but you could tell he was in a lot of pain and discomfort. And 3 to 4 week prognosis after one game is certainly not what Columbus was hoping for one of their top dynamic players, that's for certain. The Colorado Avalanche, of course, raised their Stanley Cup banner and beat the Hawks 5-2 in the process. A lot of players on the Avalanche team looked pretty solid last night. The Ducks and Kraken had an overtime game, 5-4 for Anaheim. Lots of exciting goals that went back and forth, and it was certainly a fun game to watch. I didn't, of course, get to watch it all, but I did see part of it. And it looked like it was rather entertaining. Troy Terry scored for the Ducks a few times. It was just one of the games that you might not, when you look at the schedule, you might look, okay, Anaheim, Seattle, a couple teams that aren't expected to do a lot this year, might not really get excited about, but it actually was a pretty good game and provided some pretty good entertainment there. So overall, like I said, some good hockey last night. Lots more on the agenda tonight. A couple of injuries that are, unfortunately, you hate to see, but that does come with the territory. Some news on the NHL waiver wire. There was no claims from the players that were available yesterday, but we do have a couple more today. One of which, though, is in the unconditional waivers for the purpose of contract termination, so that's unlikely going to be going anywhere, as they'll just be released and head back. But Linus Sandin of the Philadelphia Flyers, a prospect that's been with them for a while, is going to be heading back to Sweden. He was previously put through waivers and assigned to the minor leagues, and probably doesn't have any interest to do that. Probably can make more money playing over in Sweden and be closer to home, so they're going through unconditional waivers to terminate that contract, and he'll go back to Sweden. And the Winnipeg Jets also have forward Dominic Toninato as well on NHL waivers today too. So we'll see if there's any claims on Toninato tomorrow. Otherwise, we'll end up probably with a clean slate of the waiver wire, and it's like the activity there will still be occasional, but it won't be like it was near the end of NHL training camp. Now, we also saw some pretty big news today in terms of some signings. We got a couple of ELCs done, including the Winnipeg Jets signing first-round pick Brad Lambert from the 22 NHL draft. Of course, he was taken number 30th overall, earned the nickname Big Bad Brad during training camp. Obviously, Brad Lambert is a dual between Canada and Finland for citizenship, played his hockey over in Finland leading up to the draft. Right now, it looks like he's likely going to be with the Manitoba Moose of the AHL for the Jets, but it is possible that they could send him to play major junior hockey. His rights are owned by the Seattle Thunderbirds in the Western Hockey League, so that is a possibility that Winnipeg might recommend that he go there. But for right now, it's he's in Manitoba, and we don't know for sure if he's going to go to junior from there. They'll probably let him practice with the AHL team, probably play a few games, and then make a determination from there. The Toronto Maple Leafs signed their first pick in the 22 NHL draft as well, 38th overall, second rounder, but it was their first pick considering they didn't have a first rounder, and that's Fraser Minten, the 18-year-old centerman from Kamloops of the Western Hockey League, gets his entry-level contract. So the Leafs get him signed up, and then the big signing today was the Philadelphia Flyers coming to terms on an 8-year mega deal with defenseman Travis Sanheim. Now, Sanheim's a player we've talked about recently, that if they were unable to come to terms on an extension, that he would likely be a trade candidate this year as we get further through the season. The Flyers are not expected at this point, at least, to be an overly strong team and not expected to be in the playoff hunt. So they're very much likely going to be moving some players as they approach the NHL trade deadline and be sellers. At least that's what everybody expects right now. And because he was a pending UFA, he was certainly in that category as well. Although it was acknowledged for some time that he was a player that the Flyers might have some interest to keep. But he just had to wonder, do they weigh out and say, is it worth it or not? Because right now, the Flyers have a lot of missing pieces to really be a more competitive, complete team, and I wondered if they might consider trading him just because they might get a really good return. But essentially, Sanheim signs the same contract that Mackenzie Weegar did with Calgary. He gets an 8-year deal at $6.25 million. For what you get from Sanheim, offensively speaking, it's not a bad deal. He's going to be about 27 years old when the contract kicks in. He's 26 now. He'll be 27 in March. So 8 years at age 27 takes him to age 35. That's not terribly old. Hopefully he manages to sustain his body well and not go through a lot of injuries. But I'm just a little surprised, to be honest. It's not even the fact that Sanheim's not worth it. I don't think it's a terrible contract based on how he's played and what he's done in his career. It just surprises me with the Flyers being a team where they are at right now. We've heard Tortorella say they only have about 10 quality NHL players. There's going to be a ton of players going back and forth between the NHL and AHL this year. And I just find it a little bit mind-boggling that they would want to do another 8-year contract with anybody on the team, to be completely honest. I mean, they have a long-term deal for Sean Couturier, which, if he keeps having these injuries and missing a lot of time, that's not going to look good. They've got, Ryan Ellis on a long-term deal. Yes, they didn't sign that contract, but they traded for it. And he no clear answer when he's going to play again. He might not ever come back. We don't even know. He's been out for a really long time. So, just given where the team's at, it surprised me. But Sanheim is at that right age where I wouldn't go, on an 8-year deal for a player that's much older than him. And he's done well, but that's a lot of money invested, I guess, between Sanheim and Ristolainen. We knew they were fond of that defense pair, and now they're going to both sign long-term. So clearly they plan on keeping them together. I do wonder if that could impact the future of Ivan Provorov for the kind of money in term they've committed now to Ristolainen and Sanheim. Do they want another defenseman making more money than them? We'll have to wait and see. The Flyers are going to be a fascinating team to watch this year as John Tortorella tries to reshape the culture of the team and really try to take this where it needs to go to get better. And right now it seems like it needs to get worse for a little bit, then get better. I don't know what they're going to do. They're all over the place. Well, they need to embrace a rebuild, in my opinion, and it just seems like they absolutely don't want no part of that. So we'll see what happens, but this is a good contract. Just surprising that where the team is at, that they went down this road. Now, onto some trade talk. We might as well stay with Philadelphia. There is some more articles from a few Philadelphia writers I want to take a look at here as well, talking about some moves that we could see ahead of the deadline, considering, like I just got done saying, that the Flyers are expected to be sellers and near the bottom of the standings this year. One player that they tried to move in the offseason and were not successful at, but they should be able to have more success throughout this year closer to the deadline, would be James Van Riemsdyk. He's in the final year of his contract, making $7 million. You retain half of that. Gets it down to 3.5 for a guy who can, should be able to still be a 20-25 goal scorer, good net front presence, good power play, good amount of experience that they could pick up for a playoff run. To me, that's not a bad deal. We'll see how the year goes for JVR. Obviously, depending on how he plays and when he puts up for points or goals, will certainly impact the interest level around the NHL. But obviously, he's one of the names on that list. And like I said before, there's been talk about Sanheim, but we can scratch his name off. He's not going anywhere now. But I do wonder what this means for Provorov, even a guy like Travis Konechny. I really wonder, where do they fit with this longer term? Like, it just, if you're going to be a team that's going to be tearing things down and kind of basically rebuilding without calling it that, for your head coach to say you've only got 10 decent NHL players, like, to me, you should be rebuilding. I don't understand why you'd want to do a brand new 8-year term, but that's, like I said, that's just me. But guys like Provorov, JVR, Konechny, certainly your prime trade candidates out of Philly, and we'll see what happens. I don't expect any of those guys to be getting contract extensions. Obviously, Provorov's not even eligible. He has 2 years left on this deal, but there's been a lot of talk about him as well. If you're going to pay him like a number one defenseman, he kind of needs to be that, and they might not have a choice but to really find a fresh start for him, to be honest. But we'll see how the year goes. There's lots of time. I don't think the Flyers are going to rush into anything. We likely won't see some of these things happen no closer to the trade deadline. As well as with Montreal, another article today, this one from the Montreal Gazette and Stu Cowan, talking about the fact that it seems like there isn't a future for Jonathan Drouin in Montreal. Of course, the last couple of years have been tough on him, dealing with a variety of injuries, including him taking a leave of absence from the team as well. Now he finally comes back, says he's healthy, and now he can't get in the lineup because Marty St. Louis made him a healthy scratch on opening night. There's some other forwards that, in my opinion, in that game against the Leafs, didn't play overly great, didn't have a great camp. I throw Mike Hoffman into that category. I think for sure that Ken Hughes would probably like to find a deal to get them a fresh start somewhere else. I just don't know that it's going to be real easy to do. Now, Drouin will likely be, in a way, be easier than Hoffman because of the term of his contract. He's in the final year of the deal. If they want to retain 50% and have a team take a chance on him for, $2.75 million, then maybe that's something that we might be able to see happen. But like as Cowan goes on to write, it's just not, a spot where you can see a future for him. Like, he struggled hardcore in Montreal. I do think it's fair to say that the pressure that comes with playing in that city, in that hockey market, it can be tough, especially him being French Canadian, because of the trade where he was traded for Sergachev and brought in, and it was, Bergevin made him out to be like your number one center. I just think it put way too much on him, and it got the best of him, and he couldn't handle it. A lot of it can be more up here than the skill. I know Jonathan Drouin is an extremely skilled hockey player. He's just had a difficult time putting those skills to use on the ice and showing it, and a lot of it for a variety of different types of health reasons. And for health reasons, you could say, it's some of it's physical, some of it might be mental. Either way, it's been a struggle for him, and I think a fresh start would be absolutely a blessing to maybe go to another market where there's less distractions, can kind of fly under the radar a little bit and just focus on trying to regain your skills to see if you can continue playing and continue your career. Because the way the last few years have gone for Drouin, I would suspect he'll be one of those players that we see next offseason struggling to find a potential contract, might even have to go on a PTO because it's been that much of a tough time for him. So we'll see if Ken Hughes can find a spot for him to go and get some playing time and get his career back on track. But we'll see what happens. Now, with Bo Horvat, I know we just talked about him yesterday, but I heard more comments today from his agent, Pat Morris, on Vancouver media, talking about the fact that he sees his client as being a number one center. And it really sounds like there's some level of frustration between the Horvat camp and the Canucks management as far as getting a contract extension goes. We know they were having some talks on and off, but then obviously things shifted and they got the JT Miller contract done when pretty much everybody thought Miller was going to end up in a trade. Even JT Miller's representatives even said they felt the most likely outcome of that was going to be that Miller was going to be dealt, and it didn't happen. They obviously changed their asking price a little bit. Vancouver jumped on it to get a deal done, and now he's locked up for long term, which is good in a sense. But now it really leaves Horvat and his camp in a tough position. And there's some that say, listening to Vancouver media talking about the scenario, that maybe they jumped on signing Miller the way they did because it kind of only leaves a certain amount of cash on the table possibly left for Horvat. And they might think it gives them an edge in negotiations because they can say, well, based on our cap situation, this is the maximum that we can offer you. We'd love you to stay. We value you. This is what we can offer you on a 6, 7, 8 year deal, and see what they can work out. And if his client and him sees himself being valued more than that, and in the conversation with like a Sean Couturier type of contract like we talked about before, they may not have a choice but to go to market. And you know that there's much good likelihood here that if he goes to market, he's going to get paid more than what he could in Vancouver. Like, his contract in Vancouver is definitely going to be at most starting with a 7. I would suspect that they would probably prefer that to be even less, on top of other contracts that to take care of, like Kuzmenko, who was signed as a 1-year contract, is going to be needing a new deal next year. He's already got his first goal. He looks like a real good player for them. And if he works out the way that many people think, he's going to be due for a good raise as well. So they're going to be at themselves in a bind. So we'll have to watch that situation closely. I know Darren Dreger also was saying today on the Sekeres and Price show that he feels Bruce Boudreau basically is on the hot seat, and that by Christmas time or halfway point through the year, if the Canucks are in a situation where they're not trending towards playoffs, or they're not meeting expectations of management, that there's a pretty good chance we could see Bruce Boudreau let go. I mean, he's on an expiring contract. He's making more money now than he did last year when he first came in. So you expect more from that. And obviously he's had a good finish, but if they don't pick up and continue on, there's a good chance they may not stick with Bruce longer term. Dreger also made it known that having Mike Yeo there, which was somebody that was important to Boudreau, so he wasn't brought in just to be there as a replacement for if the time comes. Obviously, Bruce wanted him there as well. So that was a mutual decision on his part as well as the team. But at the same time, Dreger also made it known that they have talked and they tried to get Andrew Brunette to go to see if he'd be interested to come to the Canucks after he was let go in Florida. He said they may have kicked tires on Rick Tocchet, and it's just they may not go long term here with Bruce if the results are not there. When you see a player on the last year of his contract, it's no different than a coach when they're at the end of the rope, so to speak, and if things are not progressing to the point where you see a future, then things change. So we'll have to watch the Canucks closely. I know last night's loss probably stung the fan base after having a hot start to the game, and I'm sure that we'll probably see some change throughout the year depending on how things go. But I think Vancouver very well could be a playoff team, and they might be fine. We might not see a change in coach. We may not see a Horvat trade, but at the same time, I think they might have a tougher time in the Pacific than a lot of people might think, and it could go the other way. So it'll be interesting to watch to see how things unfold here. So let me know your thoughts on what we discussed today down in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with the latest news, rumors, and analysis on all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.